I've learned that how do we actually lean into what gives us pleasure so that we're not moving from trauma, we're not moving from the resistance, we're not moving from the limiting beliefs, but we're actually tapping into pleasure and using that pleasure, not the shame, to create opportunities for ourselves. I'm Kimi Inch, and I am most passionate in my whole life about introducing people into what's possible in their lives, especially their erotic lives, in and out of the bedroom.
Hey, I'm Taylor Davis. Welcome to Wildly Satisfied. I hope you enjoy the show. Okay, let's talk a little bit about resistance.
Yeah.
I feel like there are a lot of stories out there around what resistance is and whether or not you should run from it or lean into it. And with your background in eroticism, with what you bring to the table, what have you seen in resistance of, like, how does it really open people up? Is it better to lean into it or run away from it?
Oh, man. So when it comes to resistance, you know, this could be the killer of possibility, opportunity, all of these sort of things. Getting curious about what are the sacred messages behind the resistance, because quite often people will just default into saying they're lazy or they're tired or whatever those things are, procrastinator, this is just who I am. And it's actually like, no, I think there's something here to look at. There might be some underlying belief system at play. And that's kind of what I do in the work that I'm in, is that I talk to people about what they are really desiring and what's in the way of what they're desiring, what's the obstacles. And quite often resistance is a part of that equation. So it's like, okay, well, what happens if we were to eroticize the resistance? What would happen if we would actually consciously come together? And let's say you're dealing with resistance issues, okay, Taylor?
Yeah.
So if we came together and we started talking about what the texture of the resistance looks like, how it feels in your body, what you're noticing as a result because of it, and we could actually take this information and play with it. Like, I could actually say, like, what if you're dealing with this idea of resistance? Well, what if I tied you? Like, what if I tied you up where you couldn't move and I kept telling you that you had to continue to surrender and you had to just let go and that you actually didn't have any choice anymore? So you had to release this idea of surrender, maybe while I teased you or maybe while I gave you positive affirmations and praise and things of that nature. What that is essentially your body doing something that's so the opposite of habit, that it creates a reaction in your brain neurologically that says, oh, pay attention here. This is not what our normal life looks like. I'm feeling something different. I'm getting fed these different messages, and hopefully maybe feeling a heightened state of awareness and maybe even some arousal in the process, which creates this chemical reaction in your body that opens you up and shifts you into different perspectives, similar to medicine journeys, for example. When you're in erotic spaces or you're eroticizing things, you're releasing chemicals into your brain, everything from oxytocin to serotonin, and all this. It creates the same reaction that medicines can, where it can actually shift your perspective on your life, and you can start seeing things from in different ways. And also because of the relational component of eroticizing something, you can actually play with that connection and that relational component, where I could start punishing you for your resistance. I can start saying, like, you're doing this to yourself. So what happens if you can just start getting off on it instead of beating yourself up about it? Because most people are like, I'm so bad, I'm lazy, and what's wrong with me? Like, how about we stop doing that, and how about we get off on it a little bit? Like, what happens if you're just a naughty little resistant girl that's gonna get put over my lap and get spanked every time you don't do what you're told? Then the resistance might be like, ooh, what's going to happen? Then your body's going to start getting a different reaction to this idea of resistance based on the interaction that we're having.
I love this because it kind of reminds me of when I was in one of your programs. I went to your event, and I always bring this up to you because I think it's one of the most powerful things is you always talk about how your heart is connected through your hands.
Yes.
And then you talk about, this is not me spanking you. This is your higher self spanking you for all the times you didn't do X, Y, and Z. Can you go a little bit into that? Is that like a good example?
I love it. It is. It's true because, people think about spanking as an erotic punishment between consenting adults. It definitely can be that, but it can also be a way of moving energy in our partner's bodies. And it can, again, also be a way of releasing chemicals into the body that creates these non-ordinary states of consciousness. So I like to say, in the tantric sense, yes, our fourth chakra, where our heart is also an extension into our arms and our hands. So if I'm touching someone's body, I'm letting them know I'm actually touching you with my heart, with a lot of fierce presence and care and love. And if I'm spanking someone on their behind, that is what's considered the root chakra in Tantra. And the root chakra represents wealth, home, safety, and security. So I can actually tell my partner, like, I want you to take deep breaths, and I'm going to start impacting the area that's related to security, safety, home, and wealth. And as I'm doing it, I might even say, like, you know, you've been very naughty. Do you know why? And you might say, you know, why? And I could say something like, you are naughty for the times you hold yourself back, the times you let yourself be small, the times you don't actually believe what a gift you are in this world.
Yeah.
That's why I'm punishing you. And no, it isn't me that's punishing you. I am a version of your higher self. Your higher self is here to kick you in the ass, essentially. And when people start feeling that energy of like the higher beingness of ourselves, or a higher power is present, it really opens us in new ways, and we can introduce these aspects into play. We can bring these elements of light and spirituality and higher selfness into our erotic interactions, so that when we walk away from that experience, there's something shifted inside of us, because we had a situation that was stronger than the belief system, the old belief system that we were holding. We actually have to create a scenario where energetically, physically, mentally, and emotionally, we're experiencing something that completely blows out this belief system that doesn't serve us. It has to be bigger, stronger, and more impactful. And then our bodies and our minds start to shift into the new belief system, because we were able to feel something that outweighed the silly little thought that had been ruminating in our minds. So that's why we create these really special peak experiences for our partners in an aroused state, so that they can actually create neural pathways in the brain to rewire the brain, but also to rewrite these belief systems that are holding them back.
And make the nervous system feel more at ease inside of a previously resistant state. It's like a tidal wave washing away an old like sand dune type of thing that you've been living with your entire life, or whatever it is. But I think this kind of goes to, I talk all the time about pleasurable processes and how you can have the thing that you want. You can do the thing that you've been resisting, like showing up on social media or something like that. It's like, okay, can you do it in a pleasurable way where you take out what people told you had to do in terms of that? And can you show up in a way that's pleasurable for you?
Yes.
For example, filming with someone amazing, like being able to show up on social media that way versus like being by yourself and trying to figure out things that you have to say and stuff like that. So it sounds like, for yours, it's like a peak experience, whereas I usually talk about the like more integrated day-to-day pleasurable experiences. But
love that.
I love that you have, it's like I just love how you lean into resistance to create that vitality in life. So do you have anything with that in terms of like vitality? How have you seen resistance really open people up and like make them feel and look more alive?
Right. Yeah. You know, I for years was a trauma-informed somatic therapist. So I am very familiar with the trauma aspect of care. And I think it's really important to honor trauma at all times. But as I have been doing Tantra and conscious kink work and sacred sexuality work, I've learned that how do we actually lean into what gives us pleasure, so that we're not moving from trauma, we're not moving from the resistance, we're not moving from the limiting beliefs, but we're actually tapping into pleasure and using that pleasure, not the shame, to create opportunities for ourselves. So if I'm dealing with something like fear or resistance, I could sit there and be annoyed about it and frustrated and like, you know, woe is me, I guess there's nothing I can do about it. Or I can actually say to myself, ooh, like there's something that I'm getting out of this, because as humans, we don't do anything unless we get something out of it. So that I get something out of being in resistance right now. Like, how do I actually maybe create an opportunity for me to eroticize the resistance? Like, what if I were to just breathe really big, feel this like idea of resistance that I'm sort of dancing with, and what if I like actually like let myself fuck the resistance? What if I actually like let myself move into my hips, move into my pelvis, move this energy through my body, and actually imagine that if resistance was a person or a man or whatnot, I could actually fuck the shit out of that resistance and get off on it, on this idea of like, oh yeah, I don't want to fucking do anything, and like just play with it and notice like almost like the absurdity of it all, but also like allow you to have a visceral bodily experience of having pleasure connected to the resistance, pleasure connected to the fear, so that it can actually like move into your body. So you're not running away from it, you're actually like letting it be embraced, accepted, celebrated, and transformed into this orgasmic state almost. So this idea of fucking the things that we don't normally want to even look at can actually bring us more life force energy instead of deadening it. And sometimes people go numb, and sometimes people withhold, sometimes people go into depressions. What if we turned that around and actually said like, I'm gonna actually think about if I were, you know, gonna fuck my fear of resistance, what would that look like, and how could I move it through my body in a really sexy way that gives me so much pleasure and life?
I love that. Is there, can you give like some examples, maybe from clients or stories inside of your programs or anything like that, where you got to see this happen in real time? I'm sure you have so many. I
do. I'm like, which one should I talk about? You know, I've led a lot of workshops, and we were talking about with one of my clients just this idea of fear, the fear that comes up for her in relationships, especially around some of her anxious attachment sort of stuff that shows up in fears of abandonment and fears of being left and not being met and all of that sort of stuff, and talked about like you know, what would that feel like if we were both to get on the floor, you know, straddle some pillows and just start moving our hips around it. Start making some sounds, start breathing, letting yourself kind of like move through this experience. And what came up for her initially were a lot of tears. There was a lot of pain and hurt and sadness that was really sort of emotionally constipated in her body that she hadn't really tapped into because it's uncomfortable, because there's a story that it's going to be distracting and I won't be able to function at work, or whatever the stories we make up around not wanting to really feel deeply our feelings. Yeah. She was able to start moving through those things. And as she like really just committed to being devotional to this idea of releasing her emotions, it started to move past and to a point of it started to feel good. Like she started to notice that she kept moving her hips. She kept, you know, feeling the sexy music that we were playing, and the tears were just coming and going. And she started to notice like something opening up in her yoni, something opening up in her heart, where she started to feel like, oh, she's clearing out the cobwebs and the stuckness of these emotions, so she can start opening up to being infinite love, being connected to her true essence, which is that she has everything she needs and all is well in the world. Like, you know, started to tap into this full essence of who she was before the programming and the conditioning and the things that she picked up along the way that told her she wasn't enough or too much. And she was able to sort of tap into her true essence by being erotically in her pleasure, in her aliveness, and her vitality, so that could shift for her. And now when she feels things like that come up, like, oh, he hasn't texted, oh, is he going to call me back? She's like, I actually take a moment. It's like, oh, there it is. It's coming up again. I'm going to give myself 5 minutes, play the sexiest song that I love the most, go into my bedroom and start dancing like I'm the sexiest bitch alive. And I'm like seducing my damn self in the mirror and telling myself how amazing I am. And it just starts to like release that energy. So it's not like this constrained, like, place in us that keeps us stuck. It like we're actually saying like, I'm going to move this. I'm not going to like hold on to this too long because it's going to get heavy. I'm going to get tired with it. I'm going to fall back into resistance. I'm actually going to start moving it so that it can be released.
I love this because it reminds me of what we talked about in the last episode about, I mean, obviously your nervous system and right, things like that. But having a specific container, like noticing as it comes up, like, oh, that's not what I want anymore. I don't want to feel that way. Like if something, you know, the anxious attachment, like you were saying, and going, okay, I'm going to set this specific container. I'm going to give myself this 5 minutes and I'm going to go dance. I'm going to go move. And when you move, physically move, because I think a lot of what I've seen, especially, I mean, clients, I mean, people just in the world, is we don't move enough. And then we wonder why we have anxiety and depression and all these things. And I'm not saying moving like working out and like walking. but literally just physically moving our hips.
Yes.
Going in our room and be like, you know what? I'm going to fuck this pillow. Like whatever it is, you know, whatever the things are where you get to move and the energy moves, the emotion moves up and out of you for now. And then your nervous system is like, and then eventually the more you do it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the more you do it, it's like a volcano erupts, and then it's just the energy's there, and it's more like coursing through your body more often versus when you first start, it's kind of like just a little small spurt, just a little bit before it erupts. And then you're like, oh, I can calm now, and I can be more, that's where the vitality comes in. That's where you feel more in your body and in a beautiful control of your life, where you can move through your life alive.
It's so good, the aliveness, because that's true. People really take for granted what's going on in your body and how it directly affects your life and your reality even. So tight, inflexible body, rigid body is going to create sort of this tight, rigid idea of what's around you, essentially. But if you're connected to deep, full breaths, if you're connected to creating softness in the front of your body, and you're connected to the hips, and you're not just sort of playing life from here, but you're actually really bringing it down into the wisdom of your body, and you're able to move with that, it creates such a different experience for how you navigate life and how you flow with things.
Yeah, it's not all just in your head. It's not trapped up here in your head.
Exactly.
I love
exactly.
that. I love that. Are there any, for this part on, you know, are there any practical tips or last minute things, or if there's like one practice that you would want to have people do just to try this out?
Yeah.
These amazing, maybe women and feminine individuals. What would you like them to do? I
would say, like, it's interesting because I was talking about this woman that's afraid to be abandoned and be left. But I asked her, I'm like, do you abandon yourself? Like, how often do you lose connection with your own heart and lose connection with your own body for whatever reason? So the idea is like, how do we come back home? Because again, at the end of the day, everything starts with us, and it's all for us at the end of the day. So if you want to create more love in your relationships, then how do you start with you and create more love for yourself? How do you start giving yourself more permission? How do you start slowing it down and go back to the breath and start feeling like, what are the physical sensations I'm feeling in my body? What are the emotions, and what are the messages there? What is my body needing? What attention can I bring to myself? Does my body want some compassion? Does my body want some play and some pleasure? Like, what am I needing? Because we're so fixated on what we're not getting from the outside that we keep forgetting that how can we create that inspiration from the outside if we're not invoking that within ourselves, you know? So it's like, slow down, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and feel yourself. Feel the physical sensations, feel the emotions, and start getting curious on, how can I meet myself today? What do I need? And what would feel oh so yummy and juicy for my body in this moment?
I love that. That was absolutely wonderful. I feel like in the next episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the superficial side of sexiness and how we can work with that in a more grounded, integrity-based way. So I'm excited for that.
Yay! Can't wait.
Thank you so much for listening to this Wildly Satisfied production. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love it if you would share it with someone that you love, leave a review, or come tag us on social media at Wildly Satisfied.